It was dark and damp inside. I no longer expected anyone to come back for me, so I curled up on the ground and prepared to die. How could my mom leave me? Hi, my name's James. A couple of months ago, I got into a situation that I still dread to even think about. It haunts me in nightmares, and I even think about asking a psychologist for help. You want to know what happened to me? This is what I'm going to tell you about today. Make sure you watch this video to the end. My parents are great travelers and tourists. They met during one of the hikes. They quickly became friends, and since then, they have not parted for a minute. Then, they started traveling together. Before I was born, they had traveled to several dozen countries. There was almost no room for the new stamps in their foreign passports. They were one of those strange couples who preferred to save on clothes and household items, but spent all their money on travel instead. I went on my first camping trip when I was only 6 months old. My parents believed that a small kid is not a reason to lock themselves inside 4 walls and stay at home when there are still so many unexplored places in the world. As long as I can remember, my parents always tried to get out somewhere. Small towns nearby, holiday fairs, hiking tours. Sometimes I just wanted to stay home or play soccer with my friends. But I couldn't argue with my mom and dad. They would always put a huge backpack on my shoulders and tell me where to go. I can't say I did not like these trips at all. I was happy to discover something new every time, to visit the places where I had not yet been. Besides, my story, how I spent my summer holidays, has always been the most colorful and interesting thing about me at school. At the same time, I didn't like sleeping in a tent on solid ground, washing myself in a cold river, going to the toilet among the trees. Anyway, you probably realized I did not quite share my parents' passion, except when we went to travel somewhere abroad and lived in some comfortable hotels with all the necessities. My parents decided to celebrate my graduation from high school with hiking. They told me there was a high-difficulty hiking trail they had long dreamed of for several years, but they hesitated to go there as I was still young. But at 15, I could already go through difficult routes. By this time, I was quite an experienced traveler. Of course, I had traveled less kilometers than my parents, but compared to other teenagers, I was a great and experienced traveler. Our tourist route was supposed to take 3 days. We had to go there with tents and all this stuff. The goal of our trip was the amazing beauty of the Blue Lake, the only one in the whole world. I had to go through the deep forest and mountains, but this did not frighten me. On the contrary, I was always upset when we did not have forest and mountains on our trip. Every time I was on top of the mountain, I felt like a winner. Well, I successfully graduated from high school. I celebrated it with my friends, and the next day I put on a backpack, trying to take the most necessary things only. Since I was a kid, my parents taught me to evaluate the importance of each thing in hiking, and if you think you don't need something, then you should not take it with you. The bus came for us early in the morning the next day. There were other tourists there waiting for us. Mostly, they were Mom and Dad's old friends with whom we often traveled. This hike was supposed to be fun. The journey to the lake took almost a day and a half. It was a little longer than we planned. The route was much worse than we expected. The day before, there had been some heavy rains, so the paths in the forest were washed out, and I had to stomp through the mud with my heavy boots. Then I had to climb the mountain slopes in these shoes. My feet were slippery. Even my dad slipped a few times, not to mention the less experienced hikers. I tried to choose the most sloping surface and carefully walk on it. But when we saw the lake, we realized all our torments were not in vain. It was incredibly beautiful there. The water was perfectly clear and it reflected the sky, making the lake look bright blue. No camera could capture this beauty. Everyone was very tired from the route, so we decided to stay on the lake for 2 days in order to rest, eat, and get some sleep and prepare for the return trip. By the evening of the first day, it started raining. Its large drops hit the tents, and other tourists got worried about the safety of our way back. Because the route was already spoiled and not quite suitable for hikers, But after such heavy rains, it could even become traumatic. I tried not to think about it because at the beginning of the trip, I accidentally twisted my leg and I could not use it to its fullest. I didn't tell my parents about it because I knew they'd probably start worrying and messing with me like I was a baby. Sometimes their overprotective behavior annoyed me, especially when we were accompanied by other girls of my age, and I wanted to look strong and brave in front of them. The rain did not stop until the nightfall, and in the morning, we had to return. My dad and the tour guide argued about something for a long time. In the end, they decided we should not stay on the lake any longer. The rains may continue, and then we would get stuck here for even longer. Our return trip started quite okay. We slowly made our way through the forest, going through the mud up to our ears. Then we stopped to clean our shoes and have a little rest before the most difficult part of the route, the mountain slopes. I would not say these slopes had a great height, but falling from them could provoke some injuries. After the first part of the route, my legs started to hurt a little, so I stepped on it carefully, trying not to pay much attention to the pain. I didn't understand at what point something went wrong. I followed my dad closely, trying to avoid some difficult parts. I must have been so focused on following my dad's actions that I didn't notice a branch snagging on my leg. I jerked my foot sharply, slipped, and flew down. Fortunately, my flight wasn't so high, but I landed on my bad leg, which was immediately shot with even more acute pain. It was so strong that tears started falling from my eyes. I lay on the ground, afraid to move because I thought my leg was broken. My mom, who was following me, was the first to react to my fall. She carefully descended to the place of my fall and immediately asked about my condition. I pointed at my leg, whimpering in pain. My mom did not have a medical education, but she always played the part of a nurse on trips. She examined my leg and made a disappointing conclusion. It was a fracture. My dad also wanted to come down to us, but at that moment, a part of the rock fell off. By miracle, it didn't hit my mom. It was too dangerous to go down. My mom and dad agreed we would walk carefully along the mountain's bottom, and after a while, the rest of the group would pick us up and we would all get home together. My mom made a splint on my leg from what was within her arm's reach. She helped me to get up, and we quietly walked towards the meeting point with the group. At this moment, the rain started to fall again, so we were unable to continue our way. That's why we hid in a small cave. The rain continued to fall, and my mom worried we would probably be lost. She suggested the following plan. I had to stay in the cave, not to move in the rain with a bad leg, and my mom would go further for some help because she would definitely not be able to get me out alone. I agreed to stay in the cave, and I anxiously let my mom go out into the rain. I knew she was an experienced traveler, and she would probably be fine, but it was still kind of terrifying. The pain in my leg did not go away, and lying on the ground in a cold cave was not a pleasant thing to do. I didn't know how long it would take my mom to get to the meeting point, but when about 5 hours had passed, I started panicking. Maybe something had happened to my mom, or to the whole group. Maybe my mom was lost. Maybe my mom didn't remember the cave she left me in. All these questions swarmed in my head, making me shiver not with cold, but with fear. It's been 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, but neither my mom nor anyone else from our group was there. I was cold, hungry, tired, and I was barely conscious because the pain in my leg was making everything twist in my eyesight. I stopped keeping track of the time. It was dark outside, and I guess the night had fallen. It was dark and damp inside. I no longer expected anyone to come back for me, so I curled up on the ground and prepared to die. How could my mom leave me? I must have passed out after that. When I came to my senses, I saw several people around me. Someone was talking on a walkie-talkie, and my mom's tear-stained face was leaning over me, begging me to forgive her. As it turned out, my mom met our tour group, but when they went back together to help me, they could not find the cave where my mom left me because of the rain. They spent almost 12 hours searching for me, and they were really scared because they were afraid they wouldn't find me at all. I'd been in the hospital for almost a month with a broken leg. Fortunately, everything went well, but I'm afraid to go hiking now. No matter how much my parents try to persuade me, I always refuse, choosing safety and comfort. I stay at home and play video games or watch my favorite series. My parents are offended, though they understand the stress I'd experienced in that cave would not be so soon forgotten. Tell me, have you ever had something happen in your life that caused you to have fears and phobias later? Share your answers in the comments below. If you liked my story, click thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell button so you don't miss the new videos, and turn on notifications. Bye everyone. See ya.